Hi, and welcome to the Planet Driven Brands podcast. In this show, we will be discussing with our guests how brands they represent can help in the drive to build a better, more sustainable and safer planet. We will highlight brands as drivers for change and the role they play as influencers. How will brands positively impact the planet and its environment? This is what we're going to find out. Do brands actually have any responsibility to change? The Planet Driven Brands podcast, episode 36. Today's guest is Emeline Fellus, FReSH Director at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Today, we're going to be talking about healthy and sustainable diets. Hi, Emeline. Thanks so much for coming on our show. I wonder if you could give us a quick introduction.
Sure, Nick. Thank you for hosting me. So my name is Emeline Fellus, and I'm the director of a project that is entitled FReSH, Food Reform for Sustainability and Health. It's a project of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, WCCSD. We work with a number of multinational companies across the food value chain to help them develop healthy and sustainable food options and try and nudge people towards those food options. The whole purpose is to say that by shifting our diets, we're able to make a major contribution both to, in fact, sustainability, so the environment and also the social conditions of people, but also to health of people.
What responsibility do brands and businesses now have in regards to the sustainability of the planet?
Yes, I think everybody has a very huge responsibility. We know in which state the planet is. We know that there are already a number of impacts that are irreversible, but it's going to get worse and worse if we don't really act super urgently. And so everybody has to act. And certainly the companies with their brands, the power they have behind that, have a big responsibility, a big capacity to change things. Now, of course, it's not disconnected from the choices of the people as well, from the policies that are being put into place by the governments. And therefore, it takes everybody's efforts in a coordinated way, by the way, which is what we're trying to do.
Unfortunately, we need systemic change. We need
Yes.
it now, and that's very, very scary for people.
We do need systemic change, you're right. I think human beings don't usually like change too much, and it scares people off, it's true. Even though some people are actually quite happy about the change. Some companies actually see big opportunities. If we take the example of the whole alternative protein now, this is something that is scary to some, but it's also something that has provided an amazing new market to others. It's the same for people. People are afraid to change. So in fact, we've conducted a number of interviews with people in the UK actually, about the way they're eating and whether they would be ready for a change and what it would take. And what we heard from a number of them was, well, I would like to try, vegetarian or something else, but I just don't know how to do it. And so it's often not a lack of willingness to change. I think it's a lack of knowing of how to do it. And so it's really the question of how you break away from a paradigm, from a type of an economy to something else. And I think not many people actually know what this something is, and they're afraid of it. What's much more scary is if we don't change. So actually, we shouldn't be scared of that change. We should be scared of not changing. And that's really the mentality we need to adopt now.
Okay. There'll be a few people listening to the show that don't really understand what FReSH is. I wonder if you could give me the full definition.
Sure. So aside from being a catchy name, FReSH stands for Food Reform for Sustainability and Health. It's a project that we developed about 4 years ago when the intent was pretty simple. It was at the beginning of people starting to connect the fact that food is at the nexus of sustainability, but also of health. And the fact that, again, we need all stakeholders to really work together in order to move towards a new type of diet. The idea of FReSH is to work with companies across the food value chain to really deliver a type of diet that is sustainable and healthy. That type of diet will vary across regions, will vary across populations, across their beliefs, what they care about, etc. But in any case, requires a number of changes compared to what the mass is eating or producing today. It has to do with rebalancing the protein production and the protein intake across plant-based and animal-based, for instance. It has to do with increasing the intake of plants, because from a health point of view, we know that people don't eat enough plants. not enough whole grain, not enough fruit and vegetable. And this is one of the biggest drivers for non-communicable disease and death, actually. And it has to do with changing the consumption patterns and the production patterns to deliver more health and more sustainability. So all of the work we're doing ranges from really helping companies in their innovation, reformulation, product portfolio adaptation, basically, to deliver, again, more healthy and sustainable mixes and solutions, to actually looking at how do you nudge people towards different types of food. And this goes way beyond what companies can do on their own. They can do a lot, companies can motivate and inspire people to eat one thing or another. And so there is a lot of power, but there is also limitations to what they can do on their own or even across companies. It has to do with the culture, the social cultural basis of people. For instance, in Argentina, or quite often in the US, culturally, you've big piece of beef steak is really culturally extremely important. And so a question is, how do we evolve also the culture so that we're not saying we need to move to being vegan? That's certainly not what we're trying to promote, but a rebalancing of how you're eating. I would say the same would go with, in Mexico, where a lot of people unfortunately drink way too much soda, is actually how do we rebalance that, and how do you change the aspiration of people? And that's why we see a big trend nowadays, and you're going to be really, your mind is going to be blown by some of the plant-based types of food that some of the best cooks in the world are doing today.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of the innovation is around that. It's not around a piece of meat. We don't want to antagonize people. You don't have to be either a meat eater or a non-meat eater. Meat production and consumption serves a number of benefits. There is all of the good nutrition that it provides, but there is also the environmental services that it provides, given that it's actually that the animals are grown in a regenerative and sustainable way. And that's a big question.
What is the definition of a sustainable diet?
Yeah, it is difficult. I ask myself every day, to be honest. So it's funny to be called as an expert here, because I don't think anyone is an expert. I think there are guidelines and different thoughts. So first of all, something really important to say is there is not one sustainable diet. So we don't want everybody to be eating the same thing. There are different ways of having sustainable diets. The recommendations increasingly, if we look at different, I would say, international organizations like the FAO, so Food and Agriculture Organization, and WHO, World Health Organization, have put together recommendations for healthy and sustainable diets. The EAT Lancet Commission has also produced a report a few years ago that has also put together recommendations. They're not exactly equal, but they go in the same direction. First of all, diversify and increase the intake of nutrient-rich plants. So that's, again, increasing the fibers, because in fact, 60% of what the world is eating today is actually 5 major staple crops only. Yeah. It's wheat and rice and corn and potatoes and soy. That basically represents 60% of the calories intake of the world. That is not enough. That is not nutritious at all. We need diversity. So we need to diversify, to have more fiber, to actually have more vegetable, more fruit, more seeds, more nuts, more pulses. So that's one. The other is, like I said, ideally a diversity of protein sources. Some people would be vegetarian and they would just go for a diversity of plant-based ones. Some others would actually want to eat quite a lot of fish, and they can take it from variety of different fish. Of course, the question is going to be how sustainable. And then for meat is the same. So now there are, of course, numbers out there. You can see that on average, and I insist on the fact that it's an average, it really depends on the practices, but on average, you would see that the greenhouse gas emissions to produce a kilo of red meat will be much higher than a kilo of chicken. But we need to look into the details as well. And I think what's really important is to look at the country level, developing some pathways, which are your targets. I've seen a really interesting analysis led by a professor and researcher in Wageningen University, where they're actually at the country level looking at what's the most ideal mix of proteins. And they go as far as looking at, actually, if you grow some animals, then you use the manure that fertilizes some of the pulses, etc. And then what's the best actually mix per country that you can have. I think it's a very good way of looking at it. Of course, it's more complex than that, because we don't just consume what's produced at the country level. But it's a good way of starting to do that. And I hope that the governments will be doing that within the premises of the Food System Summit that will happen in September, but also of COP, and basically try and put us on a better path.
So where does the WCCSD come in all of that?
So WCCSD, as I always joke, aside from being a very difficult acronym to pronounce, stands for the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. It was launched by a few companies who were a bit frustrated of not having a capacity to act and be recognized as actors of a need to transform our society towards more sustainability. And so WBCSD, over the couple of decades that it has been existing, has developed a number of sectors in which it's working, always aiming to support member companies and encourage them in a sustainable path, and try to make sure that the more sustainable companies are, the more successful on the market. So WBCSD would be quite known for what it's achieved in terms of energy and climate. It was the main organization that really mobilized the private sector in view of the Paris Agreement, to actually really demonstrate that the private sector was ready to make some commitments and to give that confidence and that strength to government so that they could come to some commitments. The WBCSD works on different types of sectors. I said energy and climate is one. Basically, circular economy is another one. Food and nature is the program in which I belong. So that really looking at the whole agricultural, foods and nature overall sector. And then there is also a really interesting piece called Redefining Value, which touches really the way we value companies at the moment and the way investors actually do consider companies. And basically the aim is to redefine, in fact, capitalism, move towards what we call stakeholder capitalism, so that in fact a company is considered to be successful and valued by its investors when it does contribute positively to protecting the environment, providing jobs, being socially positive. Tomorrow, the companies were being valued by consumers, by policymakers, and by investors based on their so-called externalities, their impact on the environment and the social impact. That would totally reshuffle, in fact, where the money goes and therefore which companies are going to be successful or not.
And there is your systemic change, I guess. We're going to end on something positive. I want to talk about the future. Either your personal view or the WCSD's view of what 5 years' time might look like.
And you want it to be positive.
Okay. Realistic. Let's be realistic.
It's going to be two very different things. So
no, you're right. Okay.
I would rather be positive. Let's try to be positive.
So let's do what you think will be and what you would like it to be.
Yeah, I'm not personally an extremely optimistic person, but I would like to be. And I have 3 young children, and so I really hope that they're going to be able to live in a world that is going to get better than what it is today. So I think we have a lot of potential. I'm just waiting for the right leaders. Indeed, we need people like the Paul Polman of Unilever, in fact, Emmanuel Faber from Danone, and others that are really stepping up and really leading the companies and different groups in the right direction. And the same goes with consumer groups and others. And I see in my kids, for instance, their awareness has been raised. They care about what they're eating. They are super keen. They use an app. They scan the different products in the retail shop and they care to try and buy the best one. Not always indulgence is there. You sometimes want to just have fun and have something unhealthy. But overall, there is a willingness from everyone to do good. And so if we were able to catalyze that, and to break away, like I was saying, from the status quo and the paradigm in which we are taken, which is consume more, cheaper all the time, regardless of the impact, hoping that this is going to bring us somewhere. If we could break away from this and actually move to consume less of better quality, produced in a way that contributes positively to the environment and to people, I think everybody would be better off. And I'm not talking here about increasing the cost of food for everyone. That's often a trap in which people fall. It's not that. It's if we redirect the subsidies to actually support the better production practices and support the better food. There is a way there. And I think it would really be able to do a service to everything and the planet and the people, and hopefully as quickly as possible, because we're running out of time.
Perfect way to end. Absolutely perfect. Thanks, Emeline.
Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you very
great
much.
work. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Emeline. All the best. Passionate stuff from Emeline, but the world has to change and it has to change now. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show. The Planet Driven Brands podcast is the brainchild and copyright of Nick Jones and is broadcast in partnership with theplanetsagency.com. Planets Agency is a partnership of consultants and communications experts. We build planet-driven brands. During the series of shows, we'll be hearing from more experts and we would love for you to be involved. Please do comment or come back to us with questions. We'll be happy to engage. If you wish to be notified when our episodes are broadcast, please subscribe on the website. If you'd like to be part of the show, we'd love to hear from you. We look forward to many more entertaining episodes. Thanks again for listening.